The garage smelled like wax and hot concrete when I rolled the door up and stopped dead. My graphite gray Ferrari F8 Tributo looked like it had gone 3 rounds with a riot squad. Windshield spider-webbed, hood cratered in fist-sized dents, mirrors dangling from wires like broken nerves. For a moment, all I heard was the tick of cooling metal and my own breathing going thin. Then I saw it. On the floor, caught in a shard of glass, was a tiny chip of neon coral nail polish. My stomach went cold. Lena. Lena Marsh, HOA secretary, queen of Cedar Grove Reserve, the woman who timed my garage door with a stopwatch and quoted bylaws like holy scripture. The one who'd called me the show-off soldier with the midlife crisis toy. I've stared down incoming fire with steadier hands, but this was personal. I pulled out my phone, opened a security app, and scrubbed back through the feed. At 2:11 a.m., there she was, Lena, in her pastel cardigan, hefting a sledgehammer like she'd just been crowned Empress of the cul-de-sac. Before we dive into this mess, drop your city and local time in the comments. I want to know where you're watching this from while we walk through the worst HOA meltdown I've ever seen. When I moved into Cedar Grove Reserve 10 years ago, it was exactly what a retired soldier dreams of after 2 decades of dust, noise, and orders. A quiet loop of houses framed by maple trees, sprinklers hissing at sunrise, kids racing scooters until porch lights came on, the kind of place where you knew the sound of every engine on the street. For years, it was peace, predictable, boring in the best way. Then somebody decided we needed an HOA. At first, it seemed harmless. The board sent out cheery newsletters about community pride and maintaining standards. They planted flowers around the entrance sign, repainted the mailboxes, organized a summer cookout. It all felt neighborly, right up until I met the woman who would turn that little street into a slow-motion war zone. Lena Marsh. Mid-50s, always dressed like she was about to give a presentation to shareholders, even when she was just grabbing her mail. Sharp bob cut, pearls glued to her neck, sunglasses big enough to hide a small army behind. She measured her power in laminated rule books and passive-aggressive compliments. The first time she confronted me, I was walking my Belgian Malinois, Ranger. She stepped right into my path, clipboard cradled to her chest. "Is that leash length approved?" she asked. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She handed me a printed sheet about standard leash dimensions and reminded me that some homeowners prefer shorter leads for visual harmony. I glanced around waiting for a hidden camera crew to jump out. No one did. I laughed it off. I've dealt with control freaks before. In the Army, they wore rank on their collars, not pastel cardigans. But there was something brittle in Lena's tone, like glass stretched one bump away from shattering. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was hunting for enemies. The rest of the board? Harmless mostly. Greg Nolan, the HOA president, former engineer, calm and reasonable, helped me file a shed permit once. Maya Singh, a realtor, organized, practical, always trying to keep peace. Hank Rowe, a gruff Gulf War vet with a fishing habit, handled maintenance and avoided drama. They tried to keep things balanced. Lena wanted a kingdom. Her power trips started small. Trash cans out 6 minutes past pickup time, citation. Grass half an inch over the suggested length, warning. A neighbor hung a big flag for Veterans Day. Lena called it unapproved signage. I heard her whisper to Greg at one meeting, "People here need structure. They're lost without guidance." Greg just rubbed his temples. I saw the fatigue in his eyes. Then came the day everything shifted. The day my Ferrari rolled into Cedar Grove. I'd saved for years. Combat pay, disability comp, careful investments. A promise I'd made to myself overseas. If I came home in one piece, I'd buy something that wasn't about survival, just joy. A graphite gray F8 Tributo, twin-turbo V8, lines like a blade. To me, it wasn't a flex. It was a medal I bought for myself, proof that I'd made it out. I parked it in my driveway that first Saturday. Sunlight slid over the paint like liquid steel. Kids gawked. Neighbors asked questions. Hank whistled low and said, "Hell of a car, Leo." Everyone loved it. Except Lena. She appeared that afternoon like a storm cloud in loafers, clipboard ready. "Interesting choice," she said, eyes scanning the car like customs checking contraband. "Though I'm not sure a track-grade vehicle aligns with Cedar Grove's guidelines." "Track grade?" I blinked. "It's a car, not a race team." "Some of us," she sniffed, "find that certain displays can negatively affect property values." I forced a smile, the same tight one I used when a rookie jammed a rifle during inspection. "Good thing I'm not selling my property then." Her jaw twitched. She scribbled something on her clipboard and walked away without another word. That was our first skirmish. After that, Lena's patrols became routine. I'd catch her strolling past my house slower than a parade float, pretending to admire landscaping while her eyes laser-locked onto my garage. Once I saw her kneel near my lawn and take photos of a tiny patch of dandelions. The next day, a letter arrived. "Notice, invasive vegetation spotted. Corrective action required within 48 hours." I snorted. The VA landscaping crew handled my yard twice a week. Those weeds didn't stand a chance. But this wasn't about grass. She was testing my reaction. I called Greg. "Just ignore it, Leo," he sighed. "Dandelions aren't even on the prohibited list. Lena's overzealous." "Overzealous?" I repeated. "That's one word for it." He lowered his voice. "Off the record, she's been issuing warnings without board approval. We've talked to her twice. One more stunt and we'll vote to restrict her authority." I appreciated Greg's calm, but I knew people like Lena. Warnings don't stop them. Boundaries do. By late spring, her obsession was obvious. She called the cops on the kids across the street for playing basketball too loudly. She called Hank his tool shed violated visual symmetry standards. When a family added solar panels, she called them industrial intrusions. Every monthly meeting turned into her sermon on order and standards, while the board stared at their shoes. Paperwork scared them more than conflict. Conflict never scared me. One Saturday, I was in the garage, detailing the Ferrari. Door open, music low, Rangers stretched out on the cool floor. I'd just finished polishing the hood when the light vanished behind someone's shadow. Lena. "You can't operate a commercial workshop here," she snapped. I blinked. "I'm washing my car." "You have chemicals, tools, noise. It's obvious you're running a detailing business." "Lena, the only customer here is me." She lifted her phone and started recording. "I'm documenting this violation." I straightened, let the combat calm slide back into my voice. "You're trespassing, ma'am. Please step off my property." "This is community enforcement.
As HOA secretary, I have authority to ensure compliance. Then comply with my request and leave. Her lips thinned to a white line. You'll regret this, Mr. Cole. She stormed off. By Monday, 3 letters hit my mailbox. Excessive noise, unauthorized commercial activity, and failure to maintain closed garage policy. There was no such policy. Greg confirmed it later, sounding like he was one coffee away from a breakdown. She's inventing half this stuff. We're having an emergency board session next week. Good, I replied. Handle her on your end, I'll handle my side. I wasn't angry yet, just alert. In the Army, we called it yellow. Calm, but ready. Lena's need for control wasn't about neighborhood aesthetics. It was about power. And people addicted to power always go too far. By early June, I'd counted how many times she passed by my driveway in a single day. 4 times before lunch, twice at dusk. Sometimes she stopped at my mailbox pretending to adjust a shoelace while aiming her camera at my garage. Other times she stood on the sidewalk, eyes narrowed, watching my door timer like she could file a complaint against gravity. I'd lived under drone surveillance overseas, but this was suburban-grade obsession. Hatred fermented in Tupperware. So I did what came naturally. I hardened the target. New motion sensor cameras, cloud backup, extra locks. In war zones and in neighborhoods like this, the loudest threats aren't always the most dangerous. The dangerous ones, they smile while they sharpen the knife. And lately, Lena had been smiling a lot. I used to think silence meant peace. In a war zone, silence usually meant someone was setting up an ambush. Turns out Cedar Grove was no different. For almost 2 weeks, Lena vanished. No letters, no clipped knocks on my door, no slow car cruises past my driveway. Even rangers stopped growling at the window. You'd think I'd relax. I didn't. Because silence, in my experience, is just the space between attacks. The first ripple surfaced at the coffee shop by the highway. The barista, who lived 3 houses down, leaned over the counter while steaming milk. "You're doing okay, Mr. Cole?" she asked in a low voice. "I heard the HOA is investigating you." "Investigating me? For what?" She winced. "Lena's been telling people you're running some unlicensed auto business, says strangers are coming to your place at night."
I huffed a humorless laugh. Yeah, the strangers are physical therapists from the VA. I'm rehabbing a knee, not chopping stolen cars. She's spreading it on the neighborhood Facebook group and that local forum, the barista added. Just watch your back. Too late for that. I'd never taken my eyes off it. When I got home, Greg was waiting on my porch, shoulders slumped. "We held a meeting," he said. "She's accusing you of being a safety risk, claims your chemicals could cause an explosion." "So I'm a terrorist now," I replied, deadpan. He rubbed his forehead. "We're trying to rein her in, Leo, but until we formally remove her, she still has board status. She's threatening lawsuits if we restrict her too much." "Then I'll defend myself," I said. He stared at me. "That's exactly what she wants. A scene she can twist." Maybe. But some lines once crossed don't get uncrossed. 2 mornings later, my security app pinged. "Motion at driveway gate, 06:02 a.m. I was already holding the phone when the notification hit. The live feed showed Lena crouched next to my mailbox, tape measure in hand. I stepped outside. "Lose something?" She startled.
then straightened, chin up. I'm verifying easement compliance. There have been anonymous reports of boundary violations. Anonymous meaning you, I said. She ignored that, pressing the tape against the curb. Lena, get off my property. I'm within HOA jurisdiction. Residents like you are why we need stricter enforcement. I took a breath, felt the familiar cold focus settle in. Last warning, leave. She pointed at me, finger trembling with fury. You're unstable, Leo. Everyone sees it, you and that ridiculous car. You make people nervous. Ranger growled low behind me. She flinched, then spun around and marched off, muttering something about calling proper authorities. I watched her go, pulse steady but tight. I'd seen obsession like that overseas. Usually it ended in fire. The neighborhood started to split. Some neighbors avoided her entirely. Others, mostly newer families, believed her version of reality because it came printed on HOA letterhead. Maya, the realtor on the board, came by one evening, wringing her hands. Off the record, she said, voice low. Lena's been emailing our insurance carrier, saying you're a liability due to combat-related trauma. She's trying to mark your address as a risk property. Diagnosis by gossip now? I muttered. She's also been contacting local agents, warning them about ongoing disputes. She wants your place flagged. I stared at my reflection in the Ferrari's door, the gray paint mirroring a man I barely recognized. Jaw set, shoulders tight, tired. You and Greg believe her? I asked. Not for a second, she said. But rumors are fast. Truth limps. After she left, I pulled out an old field notebook from a footlocker in my closet. Inside the cover was a line from my commanding officer. Don't fight anger with anger. Fight it with preparation. So I prepared. More floodlights, stronger deadbolts, silent alerts on every camera. My house started to feel less like a home and more like a forward operation base. Thursday night, Cedar Grove held a regular HOA meeting at the community center. Against my better judgment, I went. I wanted to see how deep her claws had sunk. The room buzzed with whispered side conversations when I walked in. Lena sat at the front table, papers stacked so high they looked like a fortress. When she saw me, she smiled, the kind of smile I'd seen on people about to press a detonator. Mr. Cole, she said sweetly, glad you could join us. Greg cleared his throat. Let's keep things civil tonight. Lena clicked her pen and began. The board has received multiple complaints about Mr. Cole's activities, chemical storage, excessive noise, and suspected unregistered commercial operations. I raised a hand. By multiple, you mean you? She ignored me. Furthermore, she continued, I'd like to motion for a new amendment. Garages must remain closed except during entry and exit, and vehicles exceeding 70 decibels of engine noise are prohibited from regular operation in the neighborhood. Greg stared at her. Lena, that would ban half the pickups on this street, Lena. Then perhaps residents should reconsider their choices. I stood up slowly. You know what's really excessive? I said. Spending your free time spying on your neighbors. Her eyes flashed. Excuse me? You trespass. You fabricate violations. You called the police on kids with water balloons. Greg started to interject, but I didn't stop. You don't care about safety. You care about control. A murmur rolled through the room. Hank muttered, He's got a point. Lena slammed her folder shut. I will not be disrespected by a man hiding behind his service record. That one landed. The air went knife-sharp. I held her gaze. I didn't serve for respect. I served so people like you could have the freedom to be this unbearable. The back row went dead silent. Then someone whispered, "Damn." Lena's face flushed crimson. She grabbed her papers and stormed out before anyone could vote on anything. Greg blew out a breath. "Leo, you just made this officially personal." It already was. After that, the weirdness escalated. Tiny scratches began to appear on the Ferrari's door. Motion lights flared at 2 or 3 a.m., but the footage showed nothing but empty concrete and a faint blur at the frame's edge. One morning I found a note under my wiper. "Enjoy it while it lasts, soldier."
My blood went ice cold. That wasn't a warning. It was a forecast. So I set a trap. Saturday morning smelled like wet asphalt and gasoline. I loaded an overnight bag into my old Tacoma, gave Ranger an extra scratch before he trotted over to the neighbor's fence. Mrs. Kelly would be watching him, and closed the garage. The Ferrari sat behind the door, pristine, untouched, for the last time. I was driving 2 hours to my brother's place. Kids, barbecue, normalcy. I waved at a few neighbors, even caught a glimpse of a familiar silhouette at a window across the street. Lena, blinds cracked, phone in hand. I lifted a hand in a casual salute. She didn't wave back. For the next day and a half, I didn't think about her. Not once. Sunday night, I rolled back into Cedar Grove around 7. Everything looked normal. Driveways full, sprinklers ticking, porch lights glowing. I parked, grabbed my bag, dropped the mail on the counter, gave Ranger his late-night treat. Life looked exactly like it had always had. Then instinct kicked the back of my skull. Check the garage. No noise, no alert. Just that quiet nudge that had kept me breathing overseas. I hit the wall button. The door rumbled up. My world tilted. The Ferrari didn't look like a car anymore. It looked like a body. Windshield exploded into glittering shards, hood cratered, mirrors dangling like snapped tendons, front bumper torn half off, hanging at a sick angle, the emblem gone completely, ripped out of the grill like someone had taken the badge off a uniform out of spite. Oil and coolant pooled beneath it, shimmering in rainbow streaks. The rubber stink of slashed tires filled the air. This wasn't random vandalism. This was precision hate. Easily $80,000 in damage, maybe more. I forced myself to breathe, to step closer, to observe. Then I saw it. By the rear wheel, caught in the mess of glass and rubber, sat a tiny flake of neon coral polish. Lena's color. My vision narrowed. My pulse didn't spike, it slowed. That old lethal calm slid in like a familiar friend. Step 1, document. Step 2, evidence. Step 3, response. I photographed everything from every angle. Then I opened the camera app for the garage. Playback. Midnight. Nothing. 1 a.m. Nothing. 2:11 a.m. There she was. Lena marching up my driveway in that coral cardigan, hair pulled tight, sledgehammer in both hands. The infrared made her look ghostly, but the posture was all fury. She stopped at the garage, typed something into the keypad, no doubt using the emergency HOA access code, and forced the door up. For 23 solid minutes, the feed looked like a riot. Hammer arcing,
glass exploding, metal buckling, her face twisted with emotions I'd seen before only on men in combat, except hers wasn't trauma. It was entitlement gone nuclear. When she finally walked out, she didn't run. She stood there, chest heaving, and smiled at the wreck like she'd just done the neighborhood a favor. I exhaled through my teeth. "Got you," I said to no one. Then I dialed 911. The dispatcher listened calmly as I explained. "Any injuries?" she asked. "Just my car," I answered. There was the tiniest sympathetic laugh. "Officers are on their way. Please don't confront the suspect yourself." "Oh, I won't," I said, staring at the frozen frame of Lena with the hammer. "She's already done all the work for me." While I waited, I called my insurer. They took one look at my photos over the app and said, "We'll need the police report, Mr. Cole. After that, we'll handle everything." When the squad car rolled up 20 minutes later, red and blue lights splashing over the broken Ferrari, the scene looked surreal enough to belong in a movie. Officer Ramirez stepped out. Early 30s, calm eyes, the kind of cop who watched more than he talked. He walked a slow circle around the wreck, letting out a low whistle. "This isn't vandalism. This is a grudge." "It's personal," I agreed, handing him my phone. He watched the footage in silence. Hammer swing, smash. Swing, smash. By the fifth hit, his jaw tightened. "Well," he said, thumb pausing on the frame where she smiled at the carnage, "that's about as clear as evidence gets." He looked up at me. "You're pressing charges?" "Absolutely." He nodded. "I thought so." Then he gave me a sidewise glance. "Feel like making her talk before we show up?" he asked casually. "Sometimes people bury themselves if you give them a shovel." I raised my eyebrow. He held up a recorder. "Speakerphone?" I dialed Lena's number, hit speaker. She answered on the second ring. Voice clipped. "What do you want, Leo?" "Someone smashed my car while I was out of town," I said evenly. "Any idea who might hate it that much?" Silence. Then a sharp exhale. "Why would I know anything about your stupid car?" "You've been complaining about it since the day it arrived. Funny coincidence, the night it gets destroyed, I catch someone on camera who looks like you." Her mask slipped. "Good," she snapped. "I'm glad somebody finally did something about that obnoxious thing. You strut around like you're better than everyone. Maybe now you'll learn some humility." Ramirez mouthed, "Keep going." "So you're saying you did it?" I asked. "Damn right," she blurted. "Every night I looked at that car and thought, why does he get that when I've worked my whole life and get nothing? You people worship your toys. Maybe you'll think twice now." "Lena," I said softly, "you realize you're admitting this on a recorded line, right?" "What?" "This is Officer Ramirez with City Police, ma'am," he cut in, voice suddenly formal. "You just confessed to felony property damage. We'll be at your residence shortly. Please don't attempt to leave." There was a choking sound. Then the line went dead. Ramirez clicked his recorder off and gave a low whistle. "Open and shut. Let's go pay the Queen a visit." 20 minutes later, the cul-de-sac glowed blue again. Lena stood on her porch, arms wrapped around herself, sledgehammer propped like a twisted lawn ornament beside her. When Ramirez cuffed her, she didn't go quietly. "This is harassment. He provoked me. He's a danger to this neighborhood. He shouldn't even be here." Neighbors peeked from cracks in their blinds. Hank came out onto his porch, face set. Maya whispered, "Oh my God," into her hands. Lena's eyes locked on mine. "You ruined my life!" she screamed as they guided her into the car. I didn't say a word. Didn't need to. The footage, the confession, the ruin in my garage, that was all the talking I required. Ramirez shut the door, sirens lit up, and they drove her away. He turned back to me, shaking his head. "She's not walking away from this, Leo. Felony vandalism with recorded intent? She's cooked." I've heard this isn't over from enough enemies to believe her. And I was right. Because less than 72 hours later, Lena Marsh would be back in front of my house with that same sledgehammer again, and this time she wouldn't be aiming for the car. They denied Lena bail at first. Then her lawyer argued stress, emotional overload, and some nonsense about medication. By Wednesday morning, she was back in her house. Greg called me, voice grim. "They released her under supervision," he said. "Court date in 3 weeks. We voted to remove her from all HOA duties. She's finished." On paper. In her head, this just started. I called Ramirez. "You've got to be kidding me. She's out already?" "Yep, and I don't intend to let her surprise me again." He sighed. "Keep everything locked. Cameras on. If she so much as sets foot on your property, we'll nail her for violating release conditions." That night, I double-checked every window, reset every sensor, and moved Ranger's bed next to the front door. Then I lay in bed, wide awake, listening to the quiet. Around 1:38 a.m., my phone buzzed. Garage cam, motion detected. The feed flicked on. Lena, again. Same cardigan, same hammer, different eyes. Wild, frantic, desperate. She wasn't looking at the garage this time. She was staring directly at my front door. I called 911 and left the line open as she marched up my walkway, shouting, "You took everything from me! I'll take it back!" The hammer slammed into the door with a crack that shook the frame. Ranger barked like thunder. "Officers are on the way," the dispatcher said. "Do not engage." The second blow never landed. I opened the door just enough. Years of training took over. She swang, I stepped aside, grabbed her wrist, twisted. The hammer flew out of her hand and clanged down the steps. She clawed at me, nails flashing. "I'll kill you!" she screamed. "Stand down," I barked. She didn't, so I executed one controlled strike, enough to drop her, not break her. She crumpled to the porch, breathing, consciousness gone. By the time Ramirez and the paramedics arrived, she was awake again, already spitting lies about being attacked. He'd seen the footage, heard her threats on the 911 recording. This time, when they cuffed her, he just shook his head. On bail, armed, attacking a homeowner? She just traded community drama for state time. I stood in the porch light, Ranger pressed against my leg, watching the patrol car disappear into the dark. The neighborhood was silent, but for the first time in months, I felt something like the edge of peace. It wouldn't last, not yet, because people like Lena don't break cleanly. They shatter in stages. You'd think 2 arrests, a confession, and a neighborhood full of witnesses would finally stop someone like Lena. You'd be wrong. Her lawyer worked overtime. Mental state, temporary break, trauma from neighborhood pressure. They painted her as fragile, misunderstood. And somehow, unbelievably, she landed back in her house again with a 3rd court date and a stack of conditions she clearly had no intention of following. Greg called, sounding like he hadn't slept in days. "I just got word from the clerk. They released her a den," he said. "Leo, I'm sorry, we're pushing for a restraining order, but it takes time." "Time," I repeated. "That's the one thing she doesn't need more of." I called Ramirez. "She's out again?" he groaned. "All right, cameras, locks, don't talk to her. Let her dig her own hole." I'd spent months doing exactly that. Now I was done playing defense. The next afternoon, the USAA adjuster came by with repair updates for the Ferrari. Parts ordered, work scheduled, full coverage. "It's going to look better than it did when it left the factory," he said, trying to lighten the mood. Across the street, a door slammed. Lena. No cardigan this time, just rage in a wrinkled blouse, hair frizzed, eyes red. She stormed across the grass, something long and familiar glinting in her hand. The sledgehammer. The adjuster froze. Should I? I said quietly. Now. He backed toward his car, already dialing his phone. Lena marched up my driveway, voice breaking into a scream. You cost me everything! My job, my reputation, my life! You did that swinging a hammer, I answered. You framed me, edited video, lies, you manipulated everyone. She raised the hammer over her shoulder, knuckles white. I didn't think, didn't have to. I stepped in, pivoted, grabbed her wrist, twisted with just enough torque to disarm. The hammer hit the driveway and bounced harmlessly away. She lunged again, fingernails slicing the air where my face had been. I'll kill you! I said, stand down. She didn't. So I did what I'd been trained to do. Neutralize, not annihilate. One sharp, controlled strike, and her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the concrete, groaning. The adjuster's voice shook behind me. Oh my God, I saw everything, he stammered. I'm calling 911. By the time Ramirez arrived, lights spinning, Lena was sitting up, holding her jaw, already shouting, He attacked me! I was just coming to talk! He's unstable! Ramirez didn't even let her finish. Ma'am, you violated bail, came onto his property with a weapon, and attacked him in front of a witness and his entire security system. You are done. As they cuffed her for the third and final time, she twisted around to glare at me. You think you've won? She hissed. You haven't seen what I can do. I looked at the hammer lying on the ground, then back at her. You're right, I said quietly. I haven't, and I don't need to. The judge will. This time, the judge denied bail without hesitation. No conditions, no second chances. Cedar Grove's storm finally broke. Her trial came 6 weeks later. I didn't want to go, but Ramirez insisted my testimony and footage would close the loop. Lena looked smaller in court. Same face, different expression. Gone was the polished queen of the cul-de-sac. The woman sitting at the defense table had hollow eyes, a state-issued blazer, and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The prosecutor didn't have to work hard. The video of her smashing the car, the recorded confession on speakerphone, the nighttime footage at my door, the final attack with the hammer in full daylight. Each piece slotted neatly into the story she'd written herself. Her lawyer begged for leniency, playing the emotional breakdown card for all it was worth. But no amount of framing could change what the jury saw with their own eyes. Guilty, on every count. The judge looked at her for a long moment before sentencing. He said, Mrs. Marsh, you turned petty neighborhood disputes into sustained violent crime. You were offered multiple chances to stop. You escalated instead. 5 years. Plus mandatory psychiatric evaluation. Plus a restraining order that might as well have been carved in stone. Lena broke down sobbing. I felt nothing. Outside the courthouse, Greg and Maya found me. You okay, Greg? Asked. Yeah, I said, for the first time in a long time. We're rewriting the HOA charter, Maya added. No one will ever have that much unchecked power again. Board limits, transparency, votes on enforcement, the works. Good. It's about time paperwork stopped being a weapon. Life in Cedar Grove slowly deflated back into something that looked like normal. Her house went dark, for sale sign up. Weeds started poking through the perfect mulch she'd once guarded like treasure. No one rushed to buy it. No one mentioned her name at meetings. The Ferrari came back from the shop looking brand new, maybe better. Fresh paint, clean lines, no scars hinting at what it had survived. People started asking about it again, cautiously at first. That the car from the HOA story? A neighbor's teen asked once, eyes wide. "That's the one," I said with a half-smile. "Cool," he said. "Glad it's here." "Me too, kid. Me too." But somewhere along the way, I realized the car was never the point. The real damage had been to the sense of safety I thought I'd finally earned, the quiet I'd built around myself after years of noise and chaos. Lena tried to smash that, the same way she smashed glass and metal. She failed. Because peace, I learned, doesn't come from a house in a quiet neighborhood or a nice car in a closed garage. It comes from knowing you can be pushed, provoked, attacked, and still not become what you're fighting. Months later, Ramirez stopped by one afternoon while I was hosing dust off the Ferrari. "Looks good," he said, leaning against his cruiser. "Feels good," I replied. He watched the water bead across the hood, then glanced around the cul-de-sac. Kids racing bikes, Hank fiddling with a grill, sprinklers ticking. "It's hard to believe this street was a crime scene 3 times in a month," he said. "Suburban warfare," I replied. "No deployment required," he chuckled. "You know what we found during sentencing? Lena used to work at a luxury dealer. Got fired for taking a client's car for a test drive that lasted half a night." I blinked. "Figures," he said. "Envy doesn't retire. It just finds a new neighborhood." We laughed. Then he straightened. "For what it's worth, the DA said your patience made this easy. You didn't chase her down. You documented. You defended yourself when you had to, but you let the system do its job." I said, "Discipline. I learned it the hard way." After he left, I took the Ferrari for a drive with the windows down and no destination in mind. The highway opened up, and for a while there was just the engine's song and the long ribbon of road ahead. At a red light, a kid in a hatchback rolled his window down. "Nice ride," he called. "Thanks," I said. "That the one that crazy HOA lady attacked?" he asked. I laughed. "Yeah, but she didn't win." The light turned green. Back home, I eased the Ferrari into the garage. The door closed with its usual soft rumble, sealing in the echo of the day. Ranger flopped down beside my workbench with a satisfied sigh. I stayed in the driver's seat a moment longer, letting the engine ticking fade. People think stories like this are about revenge. But this wasn't about getting even. It was about refusing to let someone else rewrite who I am. Lena destroyed metal and glass, trying to prove I didn't deserve what I'd earned. But what she really proved is how fast envy eats its way through a life until all that's left is anger looking for a target. She thought power came from rule books, from fines, from making people afraid. Real power is staying calm when someone tries to drag you into their storm. It's documenting instead of detonating. Standing your ground without losing yourself. Letting justice take its time instead of swinging back with your own hammer. If life puts a Lena in your path, don't let her define your story. Lock your doors. Turn on your cameras. Guard your peace. And when the storm finally crashes into itself, you'll still be standing. Because justice doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be patient. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you had someone try to tear down what you built just because they couldn't stand to see you have it? Tell me in the comments. And if you like seeing HOA tyrants defeated without lifting anything heavier than a phone and your own self-control, hit that like button and subscribe. There's always another wild story around the corner.